All right. Well, I am so excited tonight to be having a chat with a beautiful woman, inside and out, Aditi Sethi. And we are going to be talking about all kinds of things. And I don't really want to take a lot of time to introduce our infinite wisdom guest because I want to hear from her. We know that she is the founder and executive director of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying in the Asheville, North Carolina area. We know that, and we know she's a doctor, but there's a lot we don't know. And so rather than rattle something off myself, I would really like to hear directly from Aditi. So welcome, Aditi.
Thank
So
you.
nice to have you here. And so, what I'd like to do is just kind of start from the beginning. How did you, where do you hail from? How did you get where you are now? And what drove you to choose the path that you have chosen? I'm super, super curious about that. So, come on and tell
Thank
us
you.
all about.
Well, thank you so much. It's lovely to see you all. So, where to begin? I was born, I'll start there, born in India. So I come from India, northern India, from Chandigarh. And when I was 8 months old, my parents flew us to London and we landed there for a couple of years. And I ended up in Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, the heart of the South, in 1983 when I was 3. And so I remember going back to India every 3 to 4 years and was always struck by the poverty. I may have spoken to you about this, Hope, just the how present life, death, grief, sorrow, riches, wealth, abundance were in my life and when I was in India. And then I would come back to the US and everything was so different, so manicured, so contained, somewhat hidden. And I think that left an impression on me that I didn't even really consciously realize until recently. Um, so it did leave me a little bit confused, I'll say, in my youth, and had a beautiful childhood, and yet there was always something not in alignment or sort of disconnected for me. And I'd have sort of this Indian self. I'd play harmonium quietly, go to do religious things on the side, and then have this Southern, a woman girl trying to fit in to the South. And so everything came into alignment when I was 17, and I was at a volunteer fair as an incoming student at Davidson College in North Carolina. And there was a hospice booth set up, and the lovely woman of Hospice of Charlotte, North Carolina, said, "Let me tell you about hospice." And I came up to her and I heard about what I could do as a 17-year-old, an insecure, shy 17-year-old. She said, we can teach you practical skills to sit at the bedside of people who are dying and to support them as they're on this journey and support their families. And just everything came into alignment for me in that moment. And so I ended up going through the training and becoming a hospice volunteer then. And it was such a beautiful place to land, alongside this academic rigor and the social scene of a college campus. And to come back to those sacred moments and to be present for those individuals really left an impression on me. And so I studied religious studies and medical humanities and ended up going to med school in Georgia, and nobody was talking about death. And there was nothing in my curriculum except maybe a 1 hour viewing of this movie called Wit, which was a beautiful play about a woman with cancer who's navigating the medical system. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, you're nodding.
I know it. Yes.
It's beautiful. And I was still aware that we were not reflecting on death and contemplating death anywhere. And that was significant for me, having had those beautiful, rich experiences in my undergraduate days. And so I became sort of an activist then. I started bringing lunch and learns to campus. I did a whole week of end-of-life care, a whole end-of-life care series. And I was always a quiet presence, but I felt strongly about this, something was missing. So fast forward, I ended up finishing my medical training. I did family medicine. I finished my residency in family practice and then specialized in hospice and palliative care. And that's that was just I found my place in allopathic medicine. And after I graduated, I spent 10 years in an inpatient hospice facility, a 26-bed, beautiful facility here in Asheville. And I really felt like I was home. And even though I felt I was home, again, that feeling of disconnect, something was off, was familiar, right? And I, in 2014, I was asked to chant the divine name, Bhabanam Kevalam, and create a CD for a devotee of the Ananda Marga tradition. And so I had spent 3 days in this studio just chanting Bhabanam Kevalam in 6 different melodies. I can share that CD with you sometime. And in that space, having done that for 3 days, I had this strong intuition, like it's time to gather people. It's time to start exploring what aging and dying could look like in our community, how it could look different. Shall I keep going?
Yes, yes.
And so I came home. It was 2014 winter, and my daughter was a year old at the time, a mother of 3 precious beings. And I called together a group of people for a retreat. So we gathered. I used to love organizing retreats too, small retreats. And I invited nurses, doctors, artists, therapists. Yeah, I think that sums it up. And we gathered at this place called the Light Center in Black Mountain for a weekend retreat just to start visioning. And it was facilitated by a woman who volunteered her time, who was also an activist for social justice issues. And it was so beautiful and so powerful. And actually, Jojo, who's on this call, I asked him if he would be willing to cook for it. So he was present and then later joined the group. So out of that emerged this sort of vision of an intergenerational, multi-generational village where we're tending to those who are aging and dying in a way that is so natural, so old, it looks new, as our friend Greg says, our brother Greg. And so that vision was really lofty. And at one point we thought, should we work within the system and, accept Medicare, Medicaid, and all the things? And we explored that path. And there was it was a big, lofty vision. So we started meeting monthly, and we explored different paths. And there's so much red tape in creating an alternative to nursing homes in the existing model. There's a lot of bureaucracy, limitations. This is why I think it hasn't changed in so long. And we met and we connected, and more people joined us, and it was called the Arches Community, and we met once a month, and it was really profound. But everybody was turning to me to be the leader, and I was I was a mother, I was working, and I was playing music, and I was not in a place to consider myself a leader of that, what I felt people were turning to me for. And so then the community sort of fizzled out as I had my second child, and everybody started going their own way. And a couple of them became death doulas, and they had discovered the death doula work through the Conscious Dying Institute in Boulder. Others started creating their own practices, doing other things. And meanwhile, I was busy, happily raising my children. And so everything sort of fizzled out, but the community was still there and still loving and still engaged. Once somebody started a death cafe. And so this community has been steeped in creative ways of approaching death and dying. And Asheville is also sort of a vortex. If any of you have been here, it's a very powerful place. The land is very powerful. So fast forward 2021, again, Jojo, my brother on this call, he had been following this beloved young man, 36-year-old with a brain tumor, who was diagnosed right at the start of the pandemic. And this young man, amazing being, Ethan Sisser, started documenting his dying journey, really at the time, his cancer journey, on social media, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. And it was during the pandemic, so he was starting to get a lot of followers and a lot of interest in his journey. And Jojo happened to see some of his posts and started following him as well. And this young man, it became clear he was dying, and treatments were no longer working. And he had moved from New York, where his mom was living, to Charlotte, where his dad was living, and ended up in an inpatient hospice facility. And there in one of his interviews or podcasts, he was also very loved and cherished. Jojo heard him say, I am dying and I want to die. And I'm told I'm dying. And I want to, number one, die in community. This is how I remember it. Die in community. And number two, film my dying process. to support others to have less fear around death.
Wow.
So Jojo got that call and reached out to me as the hospice doc community organizer in Asheville, and our friend Scott Kirschenbaum, a director of films. He's done some beautiful films, very intimate films. One filming a woman having a home birth, which I think the first of its kind from start to finish. And he picks one subject to really follow closely and do a deep dive with. And then the second was a woman with Alzheimer's disease living in an assisted living facility. So what a beautiful subject to approach as a filmmaker, death. And Scott Kirschenbaum will say, I used to have a terrifying, debilitating fear of death before this journey. So, should I pause for any questions or keep going? I feel like I'm talking.
Keep going, and then we'll go back.
Okay. So, the first thing we did was, so I'll just briefly tell you that when Jojo called me, from that moment that I did a quick Zoom call shortly after the initial request to connect. And from that moment on, even to this day, I feel like I entered not an alternate reality, but I was definitely in an altered state of consciousness from that moment on. So something shifted. And so I met Ethan to get a sense of what his wishes were. It was clear he wanted to come to Asheville. So we, when you make a transfer within the medical system, it's seamless usually if you're organized. But and they are, so that was good. He quickly got to Asheville, and then they wouldn't allow filming to happen in the facility where I had devoted 10 years of my life lovingly.
Huh.
This was after a whole day of talking to risk management and legal and all these people that had said, sure, this sounds like a great opportunity to support hospice and to support a dying man's wish. And at the last minute, as he literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes before he was rolling in, the VP of our whole division, which mind you, we were bought by a large for-profit entity that had shifted the culture of hospice within the organization. And when they said filming was not going to be allowed, something shifted in me. It was just an awareness that, you know what, I can only grow so much in this model. I can only serve so much in this way, in this space. And from that moment on, we quickly got him to a home setting, rallied the Arches community that we had connected with, 2014. So many of those people, including Jojo, were present to care for this young man, get him to a home setting, and give him the support he needed to create a dying experience that reflected his life. And it was captured on a film, the documentary called The Last Ecstatic Days. And then, this is a long story, but then when he died and took his last breath, I had a deep knowing. I had to put my notice in, not having a plan, just trusting that I was being guided. And that journey, that surrender, led to the Center for Conscious Living and Dying as it is, and it's all its forms. So.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that incredible journey. I'm kind of stunned by it. And I want to hear in more detail what the center is now. I mean, what you've created. But let's just go back for a minute, because it's so interesting that I have to say, I share some things with you. And that is, at 17, I read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book. And nobody in high school was reading on death and dying, I don't think, except for me. And that started an interest in me that, has stayed with me to this day and morphed into various things. But I find it very interesting that you had your opportunity at that time and you just went right for it. And I think, well, what would you say? Would you say that hospice then is a slightly different animal than it is now?
Well, hospice workers do incredible work, and hospice has come a long way. But about 70% of them are for profit now, whereas they used to be a grassroots, community centered effort. It has become more medicalized. And death has become more medicalized. And I don't
Yeah.
think it was intention, but hospice emerged out of the medical model to care for those mainly with cancer at the time. And so I would say it's just limited. We are still working closely with hospice. They provide all the medical care, and I'll speak more to this, but the center offers the non-medical, holistic, ceremonial, ritualistic, volunteer-led, caregiving supportive care.
Hmm. Beautiful. You can go a little further.
Sure.
And do you find the same, do you find, um, so just sort of on that same topic, because I was asked this the other day in an interview, the role of the death doula and how does that fit in with the hospice worker and caregiver? And I don't know. I answered what my understanding was. I was trained as a death doula, but before that I was already doing it. So I just said, we can just go a little farther and we can take more time and have the conversations that the hospice worker, in my memory from having a hospice in home for grandparents and things like that, there was more spaciousness around it and much more, I don't know, personal attention, conversation, that kind of thing. Um, than they have now. And you've explained it. It's become a for-profit endeavor, and so there are guidelines and timelines and all of those things. And so the death doulas have kind of come in and taken that space that used to be what I saw as a hospice role, and they've sort of filled it in, and it's kind of a nice handoff in a way that if the two work together really well.
Yeah,
Would
I
you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it all, some of the people that had been pioneers in the hospice movement would say that it was when we started taking insurance and it became a Medicare benefit that things started shifting. It was a beautiful thing to have everything 100% covered, but programs, agreed, people started taking advantage of it. So then it became more regulated. And so now
Yeah.
the guidelines are very strict and the documentation requirements are strict, which takes hospice workers away from the people they're serving. And yeah, the role of a death doula is really non-medical holistic support for the person who's dying in their family. And it's just it's such a good compliment, I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great word for it. It's a beautiful compliment. And I'm so happy because it's caught on relatively quickly. I mean, I'm kind of shocked by it and I'm thrilled. Now you can say death doula and people don't roll their eyes or wonder what you're talking about, I actually have heard of it. So let's talk. Well, I mean, I want to also touch back on I've just returned from Nepal, as you know, and I've been to India. And I so relate to this otherworldly. It's such a completely upside down, inside out experience to be on that side of the world and then on this side of the world. It couldn't be more different, right? And you go to the temples and there are bodies burning and there are people having their very public, you know, burial pyres and it's all apart and there's a hustle and bustle and everything is in an ecosystem altogether. And so I love that that was in your bones in a way. And we are not very good about it here in at least in this country. We just run, pretend, no, 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 it's not happening, it's not happening. And it's to such a detriment to everybody, it's just like, how can you even life is much more rich when we live it with the end in mind, as opposed to pretending it doesn't exist. So anyway, I just wanted to reflect that I really feel you on the cultural aspect of it, and I'm so grateful to you for how you've pulled that all forward. And so now tell us a little bit about the center itself and what you've got going on there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when Ethan was dying, um, people were so moved and inspired by what was happening. We had, his mom will say there were lines of people wanting to come in to serve. There were people bringing an abundance of food, and there was so much support for him, for his mother and father, and his community, the other people that were coming in to see him. And people were so enlivened and kept asking. They came up to me and said, "Can we do this? Can we buy a house and just start doing this for each other?" And I was sort of so present and so in the flow and in the moment of taking care of him and navigating all that comes with a film crew and human beings that haven't worked together, working together, and all that tension and drama. But so I wasn't even forward thinking at all. But when he left and it was clear I was gonna jump into the river or further roll with the river, go with the river, the phrase like community supported death care kept coming in, and I had not heard of the social model of hospice, which is essentially community supported end of life care. We don't use that because hospice is already confusing to people. So to say social model for hospice, what's the difference between medical model of hospice? And so we say community supported death care. So that's really what became clear, that that's what was wanted. So what would that look like? And I didn't know. I think at one point, I just didn't know. And so again, being guided, through a series of magical events again, we were gifted use of the sanctuary property, which is this beautiful 6-acre estate in the valley, the Swannanoa Valley, right between Asheville and Black Mountain in Swannanoa, North Carolina. And it was gifted by a friend who purchased it with the intention of us buying half of it back and him donating the other half. So it's a home for the center. It has a beautiful home overlooking these magical old mountain ranges, a winding road leading up to it, beautiful maple trees lining the drive. And then you come to an event space and there's a yoga studio space above and a beautiful space for gatherings. And so the space was presented or gifted, and the model of inhabiting that space and caring for those who are dying is based on the Omega Home Network model, which is a home model of homes that popped up during the AIDS crisis when people were kicked out of their homes and couldn't die in the hospital. Individuals opened up their homes and rallied their communities to take care of one another, to take care of those who were dying. And there's a network of homes now. There are about 40 in operation, 40 in development. We're the only ones in Asheville. And every state has their own regulations. So depending where you are, you may have different rules. But in our state, if we take care of 3 people or less under one roof, and we don't charge for services, then we don't have to be licensed or regulated. That gives us a lot of freedom to be, if we have volunteers, for the volunteers to provide medications and to actually position change and to clean and to bathe without licensure, without a CNA or a professional caregiver license. So really our volunteers become extended family. So we offer direct care, and then we offer education. We have an end-of-life doula training program that just started this year with an apprenticeship model. Hope we'll see how it goes. It's beginning. And education for our community, but also education for the volunteers that have committed to showing up to serve. So in order to really show up for someone who's dying, there's so much preparation that we have to do as individuals on ourselves, not on ourselves, but preparation. And it's an opportunity to really dive deep and look at ourselves and contemplate our fears, our doubts, our traumas, our preconceived notions about what death should look like. Just really become more self-aware, essentially, and to learn the practical skills too. And so much of our energy is spent there. When we first started, I opened up volunteerism while we were grounding, not even with a clear plan, but I knew I would need help, or the vision. It wasn't me. It was definitely a collective vision that this vision would need support. And so volunteers sort of trickled in. Oh no, I thought they would trickle in. That was like what I hoped, I guess, or imagined. And it became this magnet for people found us, people wanted to join, people engaged with us, wanted to participate. I think we have upward of 290 volunteers now.
Oh
And
my goodness.
I know it's sort of this, it's magnetized, it's activated, I would say, some energy in this community. And I would say maybe beyond, because people are hearing about it and wanting to visit. And so the volunteer tending and the community building is a part that I didn't fully anticipate. But I guess when you name something the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, conscious living is so broad. Maybe I should have, no, there's no should. Maybe I brought it in, I called it in somehow. So, yeah, and then what else? I think, yeah, those are the main education, direct care, and community. Community is really at the heart of what we're doing. So yes, we're in service of those who are dying, but the community is really what we're creating around consciousness.
So, okay, so let's just talk a little bit about that. Um, when you say, there are a couple of things I want to ask about. When I want to ask about what you mean by the community, are you talking about the 290 volunteers? Are you talking about the township, or what is that community? And then I also really want to go into what you said is absolutely true. And anybody who's been through a deathbed experience with a loved one, or even maybe a stranger, but the art of presencing, the art of presencing. It is something that you do prepare for, and um, and I'm interested in how you help people to prepare for that. So can you speak to those two things?
Mm, yeah. So I would say community around people gathered with a shared purpose, shared history, shared vision was one definition of community. And so I think the community is sort of, yes, the people that we're tending to within our CCLD community, our volunteers, but also we're finding that there is really, when we're talking about bridging and connecting communities, there is no separation. And death being the shared purpose, shared focus, the teacher is sort of expanding our community. So I don't have an answer to that. I think it started off, yes, as our member pool, our volunteers, but it's sort of becoming this like expanded community now. And
Yeah,
so the people
yeah.
we serve our community, that actually the nurses that come to serve those who are dying, and we have not been open long, and we actually haven't formally done our big launch party. It'll be May 16th, our grand opening. So we've had a few residents we've cared for, but I'm starting to go in the hospitals and talking to people. And when the nurses from hospice come in, they're transformed.
Mm.
And so that they're becoming our community, like they're aware, so it's a beautiful question. Thank you for it.
Well, it seems like it's growing beyond your borders, but and I think it will continue to. And so, talk to me about, or talk to us about how you help people to prepare.
So there is, I appreciate the question because it's not so straightforward. Everything we do is extremely intentional. From the onboarding, the volunteer request form to participate, then we have a discovery session where we really share the vision, the mission, that bring people into the whole journey. And then our orientation day is an immersion, we call it. So we're even using different language to bring people into the energetics and the space and the intention of, or the spirit of CCLD, of the center. And so our immersion day is very connective. Everything we do starts with a contemplative, a breath, or a guided short meditation or a song. So there's contemplation built into everything. There's presencing built in. One of our directors offers presence practice. So there's all of that, the orientation, the onboarding, the connecting. And then when people choose to be at the bedside, because when you have a community, there's so many different ways people can show up, and not everybody comes to us wanting to be at the bedside. I'd say 50% maybe. Some people just want to
Oh,
be able to create the energy and like do lands and grounds and nourishment team, the food. And so if you want to do direct care or holistic care at the bedside, there's an extensive training with exercise, like looking trauma work, self-reflective exercises, contemplative practices, preparation for your own death exercises, interpersonal conversations about how you engage, what your comfort level is engaging with people, and how you engage, how you show up in the world. So a lot of preparation in that way. And then the apprenticeship piece, like the ongoing care circles, when you are tending to people who are dying, we gather once a week. Those people who have served in the last 7 days have a care circle once a week, and that get to talk about what's come up for them and what's kept them in the way of showing up to be fully present. So it's ongoing, really built into everything.
wow. Wow. This is like a dream come true, I have to say. I mean, everything you're saying makes me like, I'm moving to Asheville. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And
Mm.
I love that you've built in all these ways to help people come into their own um, abilities to be fully there. It's so easy for us to fractionate off, and that's how our lives are now. It takes real dedication and skill to stay in. But that's one of the most beautiful things, though, and the most attractive things in my mind about working, especially at bedside, because there's nowhere to run and hide in a way. I mean, once you get hooked in, and there seems to be, and I think you'll agree with me, and I want to hear from you about it, a a special quality to in the room when you're with somebody who is, you know, in their transition. There is an altered state kind of thing. It's kind of like you walk in the room and you're in a different world, and to be okay with that, and to allow that to take you where you can go. And I have some stories about that, but I'm sure you do as well, many. So let's just talk a little bit about that rarefied air that is around the person who is departing.
Hmm. Yeah, what's coming through is I don't know if the veil is thinner during those times, or if we're more aware of the veil that is thin.
Mhm.
But regardless of which is true, I think it could be a combination of both. Um, there is a palpable energetic that is, for me, is, and I'm feeling into this space of, there's a dear brother who's very loved and cherished currently in this state. And so I was there a couple of days ago, and it's it's like there's profound love and profound presence. And I think the combination of the two is ineffable, really.
Yeah, it is. And it's almost like the most life-filled, the most life-filled moment is around this leave taking. All our capacities are on, on bright, turned way up. And I also feel, and tell me what you think about this, in that state, we become much more intuitive. And so if the person is unable to speak at that time, whatever, we might get a hit about what they need, or something they might need to be read to them, or some music or something. You start to get super aware of messages coming in that state. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I want to honor that, the deaths these experiences that you and I are talking about, I've experienced as a death doula, less so as a physician in the medical model because there's a lot of distraction, you know?
Yeah.
So I just want to make that distinction. But yes, I think the most supported deaths and the most profound deaths are places, are experiences that, or the dying experiences, I should say, are ones that, where there is that ability to be so still and so in tune and so in our knowing that we have access to information that will serve that departing soul, is how
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful way of putting it. So let's talk about you mentioned that one of the trainings is on how to prepare for your own death. And I'm very curious about this. As I took a course on this many years ago, based on uh, not just the Tibetans, but other ancient cultures did practice leaving their bodies. In fact, what I was taught was that the most important thing you could do as a living person is to die well. And in the indigenous, old cultures, maybe not even that old, but because if you died well, if you got fully out and you kind of had practiced it, you would not then be hanging around, kind of mucking up the the air, you know, and so it was considered a responsibility, one responsibility to die well. And so we did some dying practices, and that was wild. And I thought, wow, this is great. I wish we all did this, because then I'll be much more prepared when the time comes. So tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, the first time I did any sort of practice for death, it was in maybe 2015. I went to Upaya, Joan
Mhm.
Halifax's program, and I did her Being with Dying course. And she had us lying down, and really going through the physical sensations of dying and the meditation that she had um, shared with us and guided us through our own death. And it was so profound. The letting go, the shedding, the feeling the dryness of our eyes. I mean, it was kind of, intense. The Buddhists aren't afraid of telling it like it is. And so yeah, it was an incredible experience because it's one that um, so few of us ever get to experience until
Right.
we're in it. And so um, yeah, I think there's something powerful about not if even if you don't do a meditation like that, just reflecting on your own death. There are exercises where you are asked to write things on note cards and then gradually have them taken away. Like what your favorite thing to do, your favorite pastime, favorite person you like to be with and communicate with. And those are gradually like the shedding, the letting go of layers of ourselves that happens when we're dying physically. You can actually start to be aware of and practice in your living days. And I think it's about becoming comfortable with the discomfort and really surrendering to the what is of your life. I mean, there's so much to say about dying before you die, and however you get there, however you get to experience that, whether it's
Mhm.
meditation, whether it's exercises, and um, or whether it's just life experience, death of relationship, death of change of career,
Mhm.
parts of us dying all along the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And did you ever, along the way, did you ever have fear of death come up for yourself personally?
For some reason, no. Fear of an anticipated death does not come up, but fear of sudden death has.
Hmm.
Two different things to me. There's something about sudden death that I find very jarring and tragic. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that I find discomfort in that.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that is no fun for sure to
Oh,
think about.
right.
Um, but I'm just curious because I know that even though I was drawn to death, I went through a period of time in my life where I was terrified, just terrified, and that worked its way through. But doing these kinds of practices where you just imagine yourself leaving your body. You know you're going to come back, but you just start to grease the wheels, so to speak,
Mm,
so that when the time comes, you know how to do that. You know how to get out. That can help somebody who is afraid, you
mm.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
And nowadays,
before we, sorry, go ahead.
oh, and now there's so much, there are other tools if you haven't done all that preparation in your life. The research around psilocybin and end of life for fear of death is really profound.
Right.
And so one guided journey can really alleviate some of that fear.
Are
So
you doing any of that?
mm-mm, not formally, no. I mean, I think if it got legalized and or if as it gets as people want to research it more, we're contemplating exploring that, being a clinical site or something, if that's even possible. But no, we're not doing anything right now.
So before we see if anybody has any questions, would you like to share a particularly beautiful story of somebody who's done their transition that really affected you?
Hmm. Yeah, the documentary shows Ethan. He's one. But I'll share the journey of my dearest friend, and her name is Paula Brown. She also happened to be my mother-in-law. And I
Oh,
met her one day before I met Jay, my husband, 20 years ago. And um, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And in 2019, I was pregnant with my third, so I was holding birth and death very closely. And she lives 6 hours away with her husband, Bud, my father-in-law, and they're happily married. But she chose to live her final 2 months, not knowing how long it would be, but chose to spend her final days in Asheville with us in Black Mountain. And her death, pancreatic cancer is notoriously painful. And
mhm.
the cases I have cared for, because I was in an inpatient hospice facility, which is like a hospital for hospice folks, the cases I had seen had been really painful, requiring high dose medications for comfort. And in our home where she was dying, she was surrounded by so much love, so many friends, she has 6 sisters and their extended, all the family came, and we were held and we were supported, again, community supported death care. And she received, our community came together and offered her acupuncture and aromatherapy and mistletoe injections, and which is an anthroposophic medicine to enhance well-being and has helped with pain. um, Acupuncture, I already said, sound healing, you name it, just every modality that could have possibly been offered to her was. And her comfort was astounding, her alertness was astounding, her acceptance of what was happening was surprising and profound. And the experience was so enriching for all of us. Again, this was 2 years before Ethan, so it seems like I use those two as really showing me the way of how it can be for people who want this kind of death. Not everybody wants community death care. Um, and then we did her after death care, which was profound because everybody, many people that were with us at the time said, there's no way I can help prepare her body. And it was just me and Jay, my husband, looked at each other and we said, if nobody else can do this, we'll still do this, right? And it was kind of new for me to do it for a loved one. I'd done it for others, but so we prepared her body and everybody participated, the
Oh,
children, and it was transformative for them. And then we did a green burial, and they all were with her shrouded body and celebrated her, honored her, and put her back in the ground and helped close her grave. And so from start to finish, it was just
wow.
trans, yeah, exquisite.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. And that is what we would call a good death. Really is. And I think what's interesting, and to me, what really makes the difference in the situations that I've been in is when the person who is dying is able to be honest and accurate with where they are. It's when they are in denial that the whole team and the family and everybody else has to be maintaining that denial, and you don't get that richness, you don't get that interchange, the beautiful expression of love and all of that that comes with the dying one coming to terms with their situation. And that like it's like they're the linchpin at the top of the pyramid,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
I just you have to meet people where they are. So you're absolutely right. If that person is not accepting, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Well, let's see if anybody wants to ask a question of Aditi here. Yeah. Hey, Patricia. Unmute yourself, honey. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much. Um, I also have had a long interest in the spiritual dimensions of death and dying, going all the way back to Ram Dass when he had those motels in New Mexico. A couple people just learned how to breathe and they actually moved on with their life. They really weren't dying. But I've been interested. I was taught a Tibetan breath practice years ago, and I'd shared it in some hospices to get the breath down to 1 breath per minute. And many times they would pass within a day or so because they were in that state of presence. But I've been so interested in the spiritual dimensions of dying because the Tibetans say that, like the Tibetan book of living and dying, that as our elements leave the body, obviously the breath is the last one to leave, that there are visions that come with it. And has anybody ever talked or shared those visions? I mean, there's always deathbed visions that people have, that they're loved ones that come back. But has anyone ever shared those, what those visions are like?
I think what I know of those visions comes from people who've shared near-death experiences
Uh-huh.
and shared death experiences. So less so people who are in the dying process. But I really feel like I'm a student again, we're always students, but I feel like I'm really at the beginning of my understanding of conscious dying. And this sort of thing, the answers to these questions. And so far, one person who I spoke of, he's sort of experiencing like what he described as sort of he looks like he's leaving, and he has these experiences of orbits of light, because when he comes back he shares it. He tells us like, I saw orbits of light. And so I don't know, and he's sort of constrained in this physical body. Why am I still here? I don't understand. So that's, yeah. So I don't know more to say than that. But oftentimes light is in light and people who've gone before, or ancestors, or yeah, people who've gone before, essentially ancestors or friends.
Hope, you may know this man, Body and Soul over in Great Barrington.
Stephen, yeah.
Well, he's got the sight to see the other side, and he had worked in hospice for many years. And we were talking about like 5 planets in Scorpio. I figure something like that would be his sign. And I said, well, I thought that the way to die would be on your right side. So you breathe out your left nostril. That's kind of what the Tibetans say. He said, that's not what I've observed in hospice. They pass through the back of through their heart center, out the back. They come in the front. They look at themselves. They go back in, and then they go.
Huh.
So it's interesting to have that because, and then you think of lying in corpse pose, in yoga. So it's interesting because the baby boomers are all going to die soon. We look at all of our favorite musicians; they're like in their 80s. I'm in my 70s. Hope's still in her 40s, and
Ha.
so yes, I've always said I want a conscious death. But the other thing too is, immediately you die, they get you ready for the funeral parlor. You're supposed to be able to lie there at least for several hours, so all the different subtle bodies leave the physical body. That's what I personally want. I don't want to, I want to be able to lie in state for a while. And in
Me
Europe,
too.
they do that. They don't put them up in a facility to have them embalmed. They just let them stay. So that's what way I want to pass. But I think, and in Asheville, you are in a portal. There is a portal, and
That's true.
diamonds. There's more diamonds in that Black Mountain. There's a motherload of diamonds there. Did you
Hmm.
know
Mm-mm.
that?
Wow.
So
Thank you.
God bless you for the work that you're doing. It's very powerful.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Aditi, talk a little bit about how you prepare the body afterwards, after death care.
Yeah. So, um, it's amazing how simple it really is. I think I took a class years ago with all this technique, and I thought, oh gosh, I have to do it right, and all the things. And really, when someone takes their last breath, nothing has to be done.
Mhm.
So there's first just being in the space and the stillness of that moment. And then about an hour or so later, it depending on the person's beliefs and preferences, usually sometime later I straighten the legs just because it helps with, before 6 hours at least. But straighten the legs and um, kind of remove anything. We remove anything that's medical, so tape or fentanyl patches or catheter,
Mhm.
soft sets if they have injection sites. But and then oftentimes we invite the family to do a ritual bath.
Mhm.
So even if the person's been bathed, there's something so powerful about just honoring this body and cleaning it and cleansing it. And then there's an anointing ritual that a friend of mine, Trish Rux, created. There are many, I'm sure, different types, non-denominational, non-religious, where we just honor the eyes that have seen so much, the shoulders that have, you can create your affirmation, or the heart that's felt so deeply, the mouth that's spoken such truth. We just go down the body and honor the body that way. Um, and then prepare whatever, cloak them in whatever garb the family would want, and keep them on dry ice, um, which we use Techni ice, which is like a fancy ice pack that can last 4 to 8 hours, depending on how long the body's going to be in honor. Because when they first die, you have to change the ice every 4 hours because it's warmer, hotter, and then you can space it out. And then first we create the ritual space before we do any of this, candles, aromatherapy, music. And then we adorn the body, usually with flowers. And it's just this exquisite sight. So beautiful. Yeah, sometimes you set the features. I mean, you can close the mouth, shut the eyes. Funeral homes glue them shut. So we don't often do that, but yeah.
And how long do you let the body be in state?
Up to 3 days. Some families just want 24 hours. Some want, you know, some of it's convenience, depending when the green burial can be.
Mhm.
So it varies, but up to 3 days.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of the recipe,
Mhm.
the old school recipe days. Um, wow, I cannot wait to come to your place and see what you've got going on. And I'm so excited that we're going to be doing our Graceful Passages workshop there. And it's such a perfect fit, because Graceful came out of uh, this desire to help people in their transitioning. And especially for that person who is transitioning, but also for the families. And I think it's a beautiful tool to add, if you don't already have it going on, for your presencing toolkit. It's really something. It helps to clear out the cobwebs of your own grief and bring you right into place. And Gary Malkin and his partners did such an exquisite job with it. So even to this day, he played it the other day for this interview we were having. he played one of the pieces, and I have yet to get through it without crying. And I've heard it so many times, but it's so moving. It's
Yeah.
so moving.
I had seen the Graceful Passages book, the CD compilation over the years and all the hospice training programs. And I finally bought it years ago. So I'm grateful.
Good. Well, we're really excited to bring this workshop to your place, because I think it's going to be pretty amazing to be there doing it. It's not just some random hall somewhere. It's here at this special place. So that has so much care and love that I just love the way you are approaching this. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And something, as I wrote in my email, I might say, okay, just whatever happens at the end, just get me down to Aditi. I'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you so much. Anybody else have anything they want to say or ask before we sign off?
I just
You're
have
all
like a question. There was a doctor from MD Anderson and ran hospice there, and he told some of the amazing deathbed visions that people have. The loved ones always sit on the bed, and if you've ever felt that, you can actually feel the mattress go down. I've had it happen a couple of times. I wonder if you could see it in the third dimension, if you can actually see that mattress go down. Have you ever seen that?
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
But it was at the other stage of life. It was during birth. And twice it happened to me in the hospital with the same child. And I felt and heard the mattress go down, and I looked and it did not go down, but I felt it and I heard it and it happened again. So no, I looked, but no, it did not go down. I actually want to share a story of my own. Maybe this will finish it off. But in terms of this, what happens at the end and vision, it's not so much visions, but when we were talking about that heightened quality, the thin veil. And when my mother was dying, it was just my sister and I, everybody else had left. Um, and we were on opposite sides of the bed, and I had my eyes closed. And all of a sudden, you know how in diners back in the day, you could have these little flip charts for the jukebox, and you could play D4, and you'd pick your thing and put your quarter in, and then the music would play. Well, I had one of those little flip things come into my consciousness, and it had a song on it. And so I said to my sister, and I, at one point in my life, was a professional singer. Not that that mattered at Deathbed, because I was, also choked up, but it was just funny that it came in this form. So all of a sudden this song pops up, and I said to my sister, I think we have to sing this song. And it was a Broadway song, and she was a big Broadway fan. So we managed to croak the song out, and next thing I know, another one flips up. Now there's a new song. Okay, there's another song. Here we go. And we started singing, and they kept coming for about an hour. And about 3/4 of the way through, the musical was now The Sound of Music, which was my mother's favorite musical. So of course, I'm like, why? Of course, that should be the song that's popping up. So it was The Hills Are Alive with Sound of Music. And we sang that. And then we sang Raindrops on Roses. And we sang all these tunes. And then, oh God, flips up, Climb Every Mountain. Now, singing Climb Every Mountain when I was in perfect voice and well, warmed up was already a daunting task. But to do it after we've been singing and crying after an hour, to try to choke out Climb Every Mountain. So I didn't say anything to my sister. I just pushed it down. In my mind, I pushed it down and it flipped back up. And I pushed it back down and it flipped back up. I was like, Heather, we have to sing Climb Every Mountain. And at that point, we felt like we were climbing the mountain. She said, no. I said, I know, but I've tried to say no 3 times. We have to sing it. Oh, God. Okay, well, start low. Okay, so we start singing. And it's also a tear-jerking song, all about on its own. So we're really gasping our way through this, and finally, we get to the last line, till you find your dream. And my mother died. And the sunflowers that were on her over there, their heads went like this. And I realized that this music was helping her to launch, and that Climb Every Mountain, a song that always stirred her soul, was like the last blast of whatever she needed to leave, And I have had similar experiences with other people, but that one just, like literally on the last note. So all kinds of things. If any of us are at bedside, we just listen real hard, because they're talking to us and maybe asking us for what they need for that last little blast off. Anywho, so lovely to be with you, Aditi, and I can't wait to see you soon.
Yeah.
And really, it's been such an honor to hear your story and your vision and how you've realized it and how you've just felt your way and listened and been guided. It's just beautiful, just beautiful. Now, Jojo, you came on there for a second. Did you want to say something here at the end?
No, no, my camera looks terrible. I'm not sure. I got something on the lens there that I got to clean up. So I look like I'm underwater, right?
You do look rather green.
Yeah. No, it was beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Aditi, and Hope for sharing as well. I was before this, I was listening to Fresh Air, and she had Solomon Rushdie.
Oh.
And are y'all familiar with what happened to him recently? He was attacked after 30 years of a death warrant, that was never fulfilled. Some crazy guy stabbed him in such a way that nobody could believe that he survived. And he's blind in one eye now. But he said something about he has a completely different relationship with his body since then. Like he feels connected with his body, in a way, having almost lost it, having got as close to you can of dropping the body. He now is like, and I've experienced a similar, not a near death, but a similar experience where so it's same as the relationship with death. The more connected we are with our mortality, with the fact that we will be leaving, the more we appreciate, like you said, Hope, the more we hold, more rich our life is. And I just thought it was interesting that that's what I was listening to on the radio.
No accidents, right?
But thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Jojo. And I know that we can see this beautiful film if there are screenings. Is there a way for people to request that or get in touch? How do they do that?
The last Ecstatic Days movie, I'll put it in the chat. And then our website, ccld.community, has a listing too of upcoming screenings, and you can watch it from home. Small fee, I think.
Oh, great.
$10 donation. And yeah, hope you enjoy it if you do see it. I think, Jojo, you're doing a screening, right? Is that open?
Yep, I'm screening it on the 22nd, which is a week from yesterday. And
There's
there
often
are
a
screenings
Q&A.
almost every night. Aditi, I think you're screening it on the 20th?
Through the Tibet House in New York City with Nina Rao. She's a kirtan musician. And
The 20th.
yeah,
Well, that's great to know. I will definitely catch it as soon as possible. Really look forward to it.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for coming on tonight. And I'm excited that I think a lot of people will watch this afterwards. And it's got great information in it. So their lives will be enriched by all of it. All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Till the next time. Mwah, mwah. Bye-bye.